Hello, beautiful people. It's Quinton from the Hunters of Light. It's a brand new month and we've got a brand new theme. This month we are talking fine art. Fine art's a bit of a strange one for me. I struggle with defining it and seeing where it fits. What can I say? I've definitely got more of a commercial side to my photography, but I'm wanting to learn. I want to see how all of this comes together, what it takes to shoot fine art, how do you come up with the ideas, etc. And we've got some fantastic contributors that are going to be talking to us this month. I'm really, really excited. So let's start. Today we've got Kylie, aka Miss Hepburn. She's got some great images. I love the style of her work. So yeah, let's check it out. Cue the intro. Cue the intro. Yeah, let's do it. Cue the intro. Today we have Miss Hepburn, aka Kylie. We're going to be talking about fine art, her journey, and how it's influenced her in the work that she does, her approach to photography, etc. So I think enough about me. Kylie, aka Miss Hepburn. Let's get going. The first question that I sort of picked up in your bio was that you spent time in the ad industry, and whenever I see photographers that have spent time in the ad industry, I kind of go, oh, tell me more, because my background is the ad industry. So I immediately want to hear. You mentioned 10 years in the ad industry. Let's start with that.
Okay, well, thank you for having me on board, Quinton. It's great to be here. I love that you want to know more about my ad industry experience. I guess the thing is, obviously, I would like to say, like most photographers, we know we're passionate about photography from the beginning. It's not like something that we had, we thought maybe one day. I've always known I've been passionate about photography, and so I've been mostly in advertising. I'd say from about 2011 to about 20. Yeah, but that's because it's been on and off, because as soon as I started doing my photography career more full time, I would do the odd ad hoc design on the side. So I've been slowly weaning off the whole graphic design and advertising industry. So when I say I've been doing it for 10 years, I'm talking like whether it's website design, whether it's working in the public industry. I even worked for an app company at a stage.
Wow.
You hit the ground running, and you just adapt.
Absolutely, it sounds like the really important basic traits for being a professional photographer: hit the ground running, adapt, make it happen, and smile at the same time.
Absolutely, and it's so ironic because I found a lot of photographers have got a very similar background. I'd like to believe that because the advertising industry is a very harsh and nail-biting environment. And at least photography, there's a lot of pleasure involved in it. Like there's so much joy within it, So for me, it's always been it's still like people will always associate in a similar kind of way. You're like, okay, cool. I am in advertising and photography. They'll see oh, so you're still in advertising. I'm like, no, this is quite different because I actually really enjoy this. So
10 points for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I kind of get cold, and hot flushes, and want to go and sit in a corner, rocking backwards and forwards when I think of my formative years at a particularly good agency. Mention of name will not happen, but that it taught me a lot. But I tell you what,
we do have those kinds of experiences. I mean, I have the same, so we will see campfire.
absolutely, campfires, here we come. Oh man. So I suppose the next thing would be, as far as did you choose fine art? Or did it choose you? And maybe what we can do in that sort of finding that out is if you want to just sort of explain what you see as fine art, what makes it fine art for you?
Ooh, that's a lovely question, actually.
Do you need some time? Should we go to an ad break?
I think let's roll the credits. No. For me, the whole aspect behind fine art photography, I think, and this is why with presentation, as I end up going through my work, I really go about, like, you'll start seeing the growth in my photography as well. I believe it's always been there and it's actually been a part of the process. Because to be quite honest, when I approached creative photography, I had no idea fine art photography was even a category that existed. Like most, I would like to, as I put in like quotation, most photographers, I was also inspired by fashion photography. And I always say, because there's beautiful elements about it, we can't ignore it. But the whole concept behind fine art and creative photography was like, it's not something like that was detailed enough, if you will, because now you think about when we go online, these things are so much more like educated to us, better than when I started doing photography a long while back. It was quite a lot harder to come across this. So I guess for me, also, like, one must also understand that when I started photography, a lot of what I did was starting at a self-taught platform because I was working in advertising full time. So I'm a qualified graphic designer, and then I would start learning photography on the side, like I do night classes at Cape Town School of Photography. So this whole creative process was actually an incredible way for me to push my boundaries constantly, because I would be like, okay, what is the most wildest thing that I want to create, and how would I do it? Because you're going like, you're like forcing your light knowledge. How do you process it, and then it really comes down to like your storytelling at the end of the day.
No, absolutely. I mean, I suppose for people that haven't explored much on the fine art photography side of things, the basic understanding would be fine art is black and white. You know what I mean? Because that must be what it is, because it's black and white and it's old and it's art, etc. Or it must be a collection of fruit and a thing and a whatever. I mean, it's completely wrong. But that's the sort of starting point when people who have no idea go, well, what is fine art? And that's why I'm really excited to kind of go through this whole process, because it really will hopefully elevate the sort of thinking of fine art and what fine art is and how to go about it yourself. Maybe people that were previously scared of looking at this genre are now going to go, oh, hold on a second, maybe I can try that. Let's play around with it. So I'm really excited to see what you and the rest of our guests this month are going to show us.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Quentin. All right. So yeah, I wanted to go through basically having a look how the fine art photography has really influenced my creative process in executing photography. Look, at the end of the day, I also shoot portraiture, and I shoot other genres as well to keep the bucks rolling. But what I thought was really important is, because a lot of us are like uncertain about fine art photography and how do we actually put it all together, I thought it'd be great, like, for me to actually just sit down and be like, okay, this is how it's like showing how it's influenced my approach to photography itself. So I literally was like, cool, I'm going to dig out of Wikipedia.
So did I.
Yeah, literally, because I love how Quentin even asked me, he's like, what is fine art photography? And I was like, that's a good question, actually, because even some of my great fine art photographer friends were like, how do you define it? And I think the importance really behind it is, understanding that fine art photography is about using photography as a medium of creative expression, as they literally say over here. And the goal is to express an idea, a message, or an emotion. And when you unpack that, that's probably why a lot of us are uncertain about how do you actually define it. We know when we look at a beauty photograph or when we look at a fashion photo, it's quite definitive. We're like, yes, I can see that from a mile away, where fine art, like, at the end of the day, it's quite an open field, It's fantastic because it gives the photographers the freedom and creative expression at the end of the day. So yeah, I love it because it's evoking and it's striking to our viewers. And at the end of the day, a fine art piece can be labeled as an artwork.
Yeah, the tricky part of that goal is it pretty much covers 90% of what I do. The photography has to express an idea, a message, or an emotion. You know what I mean? So I go and shoot an image library for a particular client, and there's like an idea that they need to bring across, a message or an emotion that talks to the brand, etc. So, here we go. It's just the first goal, and I'm going, okay. But anyway, let's carry on. Let's see your images.
Cool. And I understand where you're coming from. The thing is, like, coming back to my advertising background, is that your client has a specific kind of like goal point in mind at the end of the day. Like there's a specific look that's directed from your client, even if it's with your style, because all of us photographers have our unique touch at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Where the client, we're delivering something to sell their product. That's the goal at the end of the day. And I guess I do understand, because as photographers, we're always expressing an idea or an emotion.
Yeah.
But the creative expression is, it's like, this is from me. This is coming from me, from my emotion, whatever drives me to put this together, versus a client or going, okay, I'm just doing a beauty shot for this product, or this look,
Yeah. So, I mean, in that case, it really is coming from you, as a creative product, as opposed to interpreting a brief from the client.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. So I wanted to start over here, and I titled it "In the Bath" because so when I started on the whole creative aspect of shoots, there's so much to unpack. So with the bath, I literally started this challenge on myself to shoot within bathtubs, and it's a common trend that a lot of you might be familiar with. But for me, when I was shooting in the bath, I remember I was quite particular about making sure that the audience can't see that I'm shooting in a bath, because I'm always like a stickler for trying to be different to everybody else. Yeah. And so like this was a really interesting project that I started on, because I actually had moved from like the suburbs into the city. And I went from having my own garage studio to basically nothing, because when you move into a city as a newbie, you're like, there goes all the luxury of space. You live in a tiny little apartment. All my gear literally lived under my bed.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I'm in it. Yeah. And so then I realized, like, actually, I could literally make like sets from a bathtub. And then I would contact people who obviously know me, and I'd be like, hey, well, I've got this wild idea. Like, why don't we try it and play around with these setups? And they'll be in it. And so for me, like, then that alone started a collection where I literally would start shooting in bathtubs, which is great, because for me, again, this was like, cool, I'm exploring my technical skills, know-how from like a whole new level. And we're really just having fun with the set. I would plan like on the left-hand side here, I still got like a whole bunch of rose petals. And then like over here, I've got, this is actually glitter around the model. And I get to play around with the mixed media and see how does it actually work on set. Yeah. So I wanted, in the next slide, it's going to show a little bit behind the scenes. And so here I thought it'd be great just to see like what the setup actually looks like.
How many times have you slipped into the bath?
Yeah, like this is why I realized I don't shoot like that anymore, because I'm not as young as I was.
Oh, fantastic.
I had plenty of times where I nearly slipped, but I was lucky on the one hand, I guess.
Yeah, because that's a very precarious position to be, especially if whatever the liquid is or the mixed media that's mixed into the water is a little slippy. You're just asking for trouble.
I know I am. Like, and a lot of these kind of shoot setups, I'm constantly asking for trouble. It's hilarious.
So there we go.
This look at my model. Like, oh, is this a good idea? And I'm like, it should be fine.
So the next element of the definition should be putting yourself at risk, yourself or your model at risk. Then it's got to be fine art.
I think that's actually a general photographer problem, when we
for sure.
Shot, like regardless of the genre.
That's it.
So these were taken around 2016 to give you like a bit of a timeline frame. So this is where a lot of it started for me. And so I just started shooting in bathtubs with subject. This gave me the opportunity to meet people, and I was just exploring the creative process. And one of the great things with working with fine art photography is that you start building a collection then, like I was like, for a word, you're like, okay, cool. Well, if I go back, whoops, sorry, no, wrong direction. There we go. If I go here, basically, you can see I was showing a picture on the left-hand side here. I've got model over here. This is from one shoot, and that one on the right is a whole nother shoot. But I just kept certain basic principles the same. I was shooting in a bathtub. I even went down to making sure I put a fabric down first, and then whatever elements go with it. And then there would be some kind of consistency to make it a collection, you know, even though the shoots were not done at the same day, it's not like the only kind of like one of the few consistencies was the fact that I was photographing it, different makeup artists, like it's a whole combination, but there's just these elements that start pulling it together and it starts turning it into a collection. So that was like really the beginning for me, where I was really just exploring the whole creative process. So then I started getting very adventurous and really exploring like how do I make this go even beyond,
And adding a second light.
Yeah, getting better at lighting really helps. They don't lie when they say the key to photography is your lights.
Absolutely.
So I started getting braver with how I was actually exploring my whole creative process with fine art photography. And so I think like this one was really interesting for me because when you start to think about fine art photography, what is important to understand is what inspires the photographer as well. And every photographer has a unique aspect as to what inspires us. So for me, it might be an event in my life. It might even be the person I'm photographing that's inspired me. Or maybe perhaps you watch something on television and then you're like, without even knowing it, starts spiking ideas in your mind. So quite often with this creative process, like the most incredible thing I have learned to do with time is I will write it down. Regardless of whether I do the shoot or not, I will go like, that's an incredible idea, and I'll put it in my journal. And I'll do the most terrible scribbles you've ever seen because I cannot draw. And I'll be like, yeah, fantastic idea. And then maybe tomorrow I'll be like, that was the worst idea ever. But putting those ideas down is like the most important thing I've ever learned, like putting these things together.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is that, as you said, it might not turn into a shoot, but it may spark an idea down the line, when you're paging through your journal,
Absolutely.
From the third week of 2011 of April, on a hot sunny day. Hold on, that's just a shit idea. But you know what? If I combine that with XYZ, wow. But yeah, no, absolutely. Keeping track of those things is incredibly important. What I also quite like to look at, down the line is to see those sketches that happened possibly, months earlier, and now seeing the final product and putting them next to each other and seeing how close they were, to that original sketch. I always find that fascinating.
It is fascinating. I guess, like, for me, it's something I've also had to learn to let go of, because, like, weirdly enough, like, as I've gone with time with photography, it's like about this beautiful relationship of learning to let go of the construct of your idea, but also how do you stick to it? Because you need to stick to the brief. We always do.
Yeah.
But also just letting the process happen for itself, because you can't control every single element. And coming from like an advertising background, for me, that's always been an interesting, edgy part, because I'm usually quite specific about what I want to deliver.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's impossible. If you ask anyone if that's something that I can do, the answer is a flat no. I'm looking at it, I'm going, but the sketch, the idea, this is what I want. Why can't I stand on the edge of this building and my assistant hover and get the light to go where it should go. I struggle with that. So if you've managed to learn that as a skill, well done to you.
It's practice. I think it's not only practice, but you literally learn to trust yourself in the process.
Right.
And I guess like also for me, it really helped that with time I knew I was confident. Like as I built up my skill as a photographer, the more confident I got in the basics of like I know my default light setup if something doesn't work,
Yeah.
then that reduces the anxiety. But like at the end of the day, like I'm not always working with models from modeling agencies. Sometimes I'm working with people who they'll model on occasion. So I can't treat them the same as someone who's going, who's doing like something for runway modeling. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like I'm very mindful about who I'm photographing in that setup, because if I'm not, then you'll see it in my photos. It will stand out. So I've got another, like on this set, so it's the same from this Bella Rosaphine set. I wanted to include here where you just see a little bit of behind the scenes, because I always think it's so incredibly important. And like, so what she's actually lying on, for example, is the insides of the VHS machine. Video cassette.
Yeah. Okay. The tape ribbon, whatever that is.
Yes, yeah, that comes inside your video cassette.
Okay.
And I think I actually got them like 3 years before I did the shoot, because a friend of mine was throwing them out, and I was like, I know I need to photograph this one day. I couldn't figure out how. Like, what I was going to do that? I was like, look, I'm just going to keep them in my room. Like, who knows where I'm going to keep it, but one day I'll use it. And then like I've been toying with ideas for the longest time, and I wasn't sure. And literally until I met this model, I was like, cool, you're perfect. Like I now know exactly how I see it. And like that's really the whole like the fascinating part of the creative process is like you can't force it, you can't make it what it's not.
Yeah, I suppose so. And I think that it's one of those things where the more you do it, and the more you sort of it comes from inside of you, and you don't have to toe the line of client A or client B, that you get through that process. I think as I've mentioned countless times, I'm not au fait with this genre. I don't feel comfortable with it. So for me, all of that sort of fast and loose feels a bit fast and loose. But I suppose once once you do it and you get into it, then you go, oh guys, we're doing videotape today, and then 10 minutes later, but you know what? We're not going to do videotape. We're going to do this now because I've just seen this special whatever, and and that's probably what it is, because you, as you said, you trust yourself that you're in the situation where this, that, and the other. Now these dominoes have fallen one way, and now it's a completely different shoot, but it's substantially better than what you thought it was going to be when you started.
Absolutely. I mean, look, at the end of the day, even with whether it's fine art piece, collection, like when it comes to creative photography, you're still going to have the fundamentals. You're still going to like, not only do I journal my ideas, but I also have mood boards to send to my team, so that they know like the kind of lighting I'm going for, the fact that I'm going to use gel lighting. So they are aware of the general direction that it's going to be taken on. They've obviously seen the style of my work, so they know what they'll be getting out of it. So the team has a general sense of where we're going with it. And I'll tell them like, look, this is how I'm going to try it. But also we're going to see when we put it together, will this work or not? And it's a bit of play at the end of the day. And I think that's really the important part, is that it becomes literally a play on set.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So so this one was like really interesting, and gosh, I can't even remember when this one was taken either. I think it might have been 4 years ago. So like it's interesting when I was going through my work and I was like trying to like take in when some of these shots were done. So after this one, I've now got the next set where I've got starlight, for example.
Okay.
So you'll notice here again, I'm shooting top down onto my subject. And so this set was great fun. This one was one of those sets where I was basically inspired by my subject, for example, and I was like, I wanted to tell this beautiful story around her. So I literally like again, I was sitting there, I was like, okay, cool, put down in my journal, I want to use the fabric. And then I've got some fairy lights as well, and really wanted to evoke like the emotion from her, uh, and like, yeah, just like how do I like bring that out onto the set? And then I get my makeup artist involved, and I'm like, look, I wanted to have her like because like having the lights around her, and how does that really behave with the makeup and all those. I think for me, like, and that's the thing with like the fine art and the creative aspect behind it is that I want my audience to perceive it in their own way. You know what I'm saying? It's like that
Right.
interpretation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's is also the one of the things that comes into it. The for a more commercial shoot, the perception is going to be in a fairly narrow band.
Yeah.
Whereas with a fine art portrait, I mean, I've done some work for a project of mine called the Imperfect Project, and basically every woman that I've ever photographed has said, oh, please don't get this in the shot, or don't get that in the shot, or I don't like my this, or I don't like my that. And it's I felt quite worked up about the fact that there really were not many people who felt comfortable in their own skin, and
Oh no, that's a very important topic though.
absolutely,
I had told, I mean, like that's the funny thing when we're photographers is that we have a lot of friends who are not well, I mean, I've got a few friends that's not in the industry at all.
yeah,
And they like, you photograph the most beautiful people in the world. I'm like, I know, right? Can you tell them?
yes,
Yeah, to this day, I've never photographed someone who doesn't have something that they're not confident about. And that's again, like, even through this creative process. I mean, when I started my very early days of photography, I went straight into boudoir. And I like, even now, like, when I do my creative photo
yeah,
shoots, I'm like 100%. I'm so concerned about my subject, like, not concerned, that's not the right word. What I'm trying to say is like, it's important to me that they are comfortable. I mean, I'm going to be putting you into some very
yeah,
interesting situations. If you're not comfortable, it's going to portray that energy in my shots.
absolutely.
And I just want that, and that's just a general thing photographers, like for us, we're very conscious about.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the one thing that I sort of took out of that is that the audience is going to see it in so many different ways. You're going to have some people who
Yeah.
go, oh, but these are just black and white pictures of fat people.
Yeah.
Then you can have someone else that goes, oh, but what are those like stretch marks? What are those? Etc.
Yeah.
Whereas someone who has got some stretch marks, or they're a little bit more overweight, etc. They're going to look at these and go, oh man, it's so beautiful. I love the shapes, and I love oh man, I love that. So it's interesting how from a fine art point of view, the audience has got so many potential viewpoints of an image that they're looking at.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. I mean, look, when I was teaching my students, they were tackling the whole body image thing in a whole big way that I'm not used to.
Yeah,
Like they were all about literally, they will deliberately show stretch marks and fat rolls in their photos, like
yeah,
on purpose.
yeah,
Because they were trying to really deconstruct how, like our mainstream media is like perfected and idolized women form. And I was completely blown away because I'm so used to photographing women that I think look beautiful, but they're actually very self-conscious.
yeah.
And and yeah, like a lot of the younger generation are like, you know what? We have imperfection. It's time you start looking at them. And I was like, wow, that's incredible.
That's very
That's a
cool.
huge boundary break. Yeah. So yeah, that's the thing though with like this kind of photography is like we have this kind of freedom at the end of the day and using it to our advantage. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And if we can, I mean, I'm not sure if it's for me. That project was not so much trying to bring awareness to anything. It was more a case of giving them some images of themselves that looked just beautiful,
Yeah.
and their sort of viewpoint of themselves was changed in that scenario, and that for me was the point of the whole project. So I think if we
That's fantastic,
can
though.
change things or
Yeah.
change people's way of thinking for the better, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, just like a little bit of a backstory in this setup. As a friend of mine is a performance artist, and she had recently, like at the time period of the shoot, she had injured herself that she needed to go for hip surgery, so she couldn't dance. From coming from like 13 years or so, goodness, I have probably got my numbers completely wrong, but like, from a very long
A
history of
long
being
time.
able to dance. Yeah, and teaching dancing to like, if she doesn't get a hip hop, she might not be able to walk.
Sure.
Um, so for me, like this shoot was like, okay, this is really like, this is my opportunity to really like, how do I embody those emotions that she's carrying as a performance artist who's used to living the life on the stage, Um, and like, we got to share those kind of like emotions together on set, while I created this whole scene and, like her like breaking free from like this transition she's making in her life. But yeah, that's like the beauty in the whole fine art process. All right. So we have now gone from the bathtub session. And I was showing you like some really cool creative portrait setups, like creative portraits. I mean, like, the setups where I would literally construct the set from scratch. So what I wanted to actually now show is how this started then transforming into me working in studio sets. So the previous was literally bathtubs to me shooting aerial style onto my subject, to like me really now adapting this kind of formation into studio because I've been falling in love with studio again. And I just love the whole sense of it's satisfying that control freak inside of me all over again.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Um, and so here, like we've got a lovely setup again with this model, and gosh, literally mixing media, like there's no other way I can really put it together, is physically creating the set by hand and letting the light bounce off it, and just creating this kind of striking imagery. Like, because the thing is, like, this is not a point to satisfy fashion of wardrobe. This is not a point to satisfy makeup. It's just really to create an evoking piece, So what I wanted to show is like, so coming from exploring with the light in these different elements over here, I've come to discover how much I love using gel lights. I realized like I love putting these really like unflattering lights on people, because usually when photographers talk about lighting their subjects, it's like, how do you get the soft light? How do you get this kind of light? And here I'm throwing all the most uncomfortable lights on my model as possible.
And why not?
Yeah. Why not? One of those things you learn to
exactly.
Once you learn the rules, it's all about breaking.
Yeah, then you go ahead and break them. I love
exactly.
I love the way that and I'm assuming it's like a plastic cellophane. It feels like a version 2 of the bath, because it's the bath water and the ripples and all of that. So for me it's kind of still part of the same series. I love it. I think it's so cool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I guess this is one of those things like as artists, we somehow still keep those parts. Goodness, how do you even say that? The techniques,
Don't worry about the words. We do pictures. Don't worry about the words.
I know, it's always a nightmare. But basically, like the textures, like I absolutely love textures. You can see here again, like the love for texture. Yeah, and over there, like that for me, like it gives so much energy into my photograph to play with. So from here, I was like, okay, cool. So now I've been doing these creative sets, and then I've been trying to actually bring it down a lot, because I'm like, like it's a lot of work to put these kinds of pieces together where there's like all these elements. And I've been like, how do I simplify it and really start bringing it down to the basics, but still keeping that flair? So I wanted to show where, like, how I've been incorporating these looks into my portrait setups. And so I've been like literally like, how do I stay strict? Because we always end up as photographers, we're like, okay, we want to bounce off the walls, with our ideas.
Yeah.
And for me, it's been like coming down to my lighting, down to the way I pose my models, down to the angle that I shoot them to really start creating a continuous look again, because what I want to do is I want my portraits to actually start looking like a painting. I don't want it to just look like another portrait, if that even is the way to put it. But it's all about how do you distinguish your work to a different level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when I was scrolling through your Instagram account,
Yeah.
it obviously starts off with the most current things, and you scroll down, and it's almost like these sort of different almost bands of color that
Yeah.
whether it's intentional or not. But I got to a couple of points in it that I really kind of went, oh man, that is amazing. How did you do that? And one of the things that I really enjoyed is almost the matte look of the one on the left and the one on the right.
Yeah.
It's not really punchy or anything like that. But it's there's a softness and a warmth, and I really enjoy the lighting and the processing that you've done on these. It's a very strong look that I think you've achieved here.
Thank you. Yeah. So that's why I wanted to show like how the creative process has really
Mm,
affected the way work is developed. Um, and I don't think I would have been able to get to this point without having experimented in the past the way I have. Now I've got the ability to tell my subject stories, because sometimes I'm telling my subject stories and other times I just see something without even knowing them and I really need to captivate it. Um, and then like now I've got a look that like feels definitive, if you will, but I
mm.
can still pull my characters through that. And I guess there's like, that saying we are so familiar with called less is more, but sometimes you gotta have more.
Yeah, yeah, more of the less.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's like that's the fascinating part is like, we have to do those process to get to this point in our photography. Um, Otherwise, you'll never actually really get to that point. You're like, okay, there's that aha moment, through that development.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know what it's like for for the majority of working photographers, but certainly for me, I find I get so worked up in the commercial part of it. That
Oh yeah,
when there is downtime, the last thing I want to do is pick up my camera, and I need to find for myself. I need to find a balance between the commercial and the fun and the outrageous and the that's a crap shot, but you know what, it's quite interesting the
yeah,
lighting
yeah.
that I played with. You know what I mean? Because that's
No,
exactly
I
what you're
completely
saying.
understand.
You've gone
Yeah,
from I suppose a starting point, and you've taken it completely across to the other side of the spectrum, where it's a beautifully refined look that
yeah,
that you can use for anything, really, be it boudoir to lifestyle portraits or whatever. There's
yeah.
this very strong look that's come out of that, and it's just from experimenting. So yeah, it's a very strong point.
Thank you. Yeah. So I mean, like for me, like because like doing portraits is one of my favorite aspects behind shooting. It's like how do I create a setup that I can start putting almost anyone into,
Mm,
but I also want to tell it as a signature look at the end of the day,
yeah.
because when someone's saying they're buying a Miss Hepburn product, you need to be able to identify from across the room. Um, and that's when I really started sitting down and going like, okay, but what works, And like, I guess now when we're talking about fine art photography again, and it's all about what speaks to you as a photographer, what is the creative message that comes behind it. And then like, it comes down to again, like some things like me playing with my color, like color is like a huge thing. How I use my gel lighting, is starting to, creating that kind of look and that people becomes recognizable. Yeah, it's become a huge play and I thoroughly enjoy it.
No, I think it's important to create that signature style because everyone, well, not everyone. There's a lot of people that can afford a camera
Yeah,
and are now photographers. But I think
exactly.
the true quality, I suppose, is where you set yourself apart, where people look at it and go, I see Miss
Yeah,
Hepburn in that, etc.
yeah,
Or they say to their other photographers, saying, you know what, I need you to give me the Miss Hepburn treatment,
yeah.
because that,
I mean, at the end of the day, so our cameras are the tools to the
yep,
painting we're putting together, whether it's for commercial or whether it's for creative. And the process we choose as photographers, like, really is what starts to define us.
mm,
Back in the day when film photography was a thing, like, photographers definitely played around, don't get me wrong, but the need to play the way we do in the modern age is so different because there wasn't so many of them. Now we're like, because of the concern that people have, like, oh, but everyone get an iPhone, shoot me. They're like, oh, can get like whatever camera, and you're like, okay, so then as photographers we start looking in going, how do I separate myself from
mm,
the rest, because that's actually what makes you viable, that's what makes you identifiable when there's actually so much out there at the end of the day. And
exactly.
that, yeah, I mean, that's not something that you can, like, there's no secret recipe to behind it. When I was teaching my students about this last year on like how to really work with, like, because they have to discover firstly what genre they wanted to go into, and then how do they unpack what defines them. And that's why it's not something you achieve overnight, because you have to first understand your camera,
Mm.
understand your lighting. There's so much different tiers that we start unpacking, and then we're like, okay, cool, but now I want to create a signature look. And then you're like, okay, once you started understanding, now you can start putting that together.
Yeah, I think one of the downsides to the proliferation of social media is that you almost start out saying, right, I'm a photographer now, and now this is the look that I want to get, but
Yeah.
you haven't taken the time to go through the process of here's step one. How do I play with this camera? What do I do? Oh wow, look at this. This button does this, and you play. You get one light, then you get two lights, then you think,
Yeah.
no, hold on, I don't want those. I want a continuous light, and then I
I
want to
mean,
put a gel on, and you eventually you after a period of time you get to the style that you develop, not a
yeah,
style that you copy and tweak.
absolutely. And I mean, it is the unfortunate reality of social media is that it's pushing people in a direction that you kind of can't just do overnight, but they want
Mm,
to get there so quickly.
yeah,
Um, Look, I mean, everyone as photographers, we grow at our own timelines, and that's also always important for people to be aware of. Um, but yeah, like for me, the combination of the growth of my photography has also been combined with my own personal growth as a human being, if
hmm,
that even is the way to put it.
yeah,
Like,
makes sense.
like yeah, like, I mean, like, as I've become like wiser with age, I've been like, okay, cool, like this is starting to show into my work as well. But yeah, so now that I've been showing, like, chatting about portrait work, and we started to understand like how it's like, cool, I talked about the beginning of my creative journey and how I went with working with my subjects. So like for me, the whole fine art aspect, like I've always been like a massive person with the way I connect with my subjects. Even like maybe I'll find someone online, and this is why now this portrait setup has been great, because now I've been able to identify with people online, and I can start a conversation with them, and then we can start doing this kind of setup quite, not easier is not the word, but like, with less effort is the great way to
Yes,
put it. But
yes.
there's a lot of work involved regardless.
Absolutely, and people
um,
see the end result and go, oh, but that's just what, there's a light here and a light there and a gel, bang, you know.
yeah.
It's
So
never that simple.
so now, no, it never is. So I'm going to move on to the next section. I wanted to go into what I've been recently working on called the waters. So this is a picture of my husband literally in the river with my light.
Yeah, your voice activated light stand, your veil.
Yeah, basically. Um, So now what's been really interesting is I spent a lot of time in studio spaces in controlled environments. I do sometimes do locations, but not often enough. Again, as we've been discussing about the whole control freak element, as I like to call it, the studio has been the most satisfying place for that. Because even if I've got all these elements of different personalities and different artists, it's like I'm still in a room, like, it's quite straightforward, like there's that, like, so studio has been great because it's an open blank canvas,
Right.
we're like, cool, go completely wild. So now the waters has literally been something that has conspired out of lockdown for me, because now we're all stuck in captivity all the time. We're basically in our little cages, is what a lot of us may feel like. And I came across this incredible location. So location photography has been a very interesting topic for me because Cape Town, for example, has the worst weather. Like, good luck ever predicting the weather. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, let's not even talk about the wind, hey?
Yeah, exactly. No, the wind is a whole nother genre of like, let's have a video on wind. and like, when you think about the technicalities of your setup, and like, so the control freak on me just has a bit of an anxiety attack. So, and like I've shot at events, it's not that I've never shot outside, but if I want to do something that I construct, I generally prefer working in a studio environment because I just know, like, cool, you know what, the element of like the weather and the light is completely up to my control.
Yeah.
And then I can let everything else flow. So now, because of like with lockdown, I've been hiking a lot and I've been in nature quite a bit, and I've been like really exploring landscapes. And yeah, so now I've always been growing up with like scuba diving, and like water has always been a huge element in my life. So I found this incredible location that I've been able to explore to shoot in, because if it's not the weather element, like the other big concern for me about shooting a location actually also comes down to security. As a lot of us photographers know, like we walk around with a lot of money literally on our back, so like that's another big risk factor to take. And I've realized that hindered my actual experimentation with shooting outside. I always thought like, oh, maybe I was just not confident enough, maybe it was a lack of confidence, but it was also like, it was a whole lot of different elements. It was literally like my fear of being mugged because I'm a woman with all this equipment on my back, like, and I was like, okay, well, there's more to it than me just not having the confidence. It's actually like, there's a whole lot of things. I mean, I've photographed weddings before, so it's not that I can't do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I was like, okay, so I had this location. I contacted one of my models I've worked with before, and I was like, look, I found this lovely spot. Are you willing to come all this way with me? And she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know you photographed outside. I'm like, yes, I know it's rare, but it does happen.
Oh, that's
like,
cool.
I promise. So with that, we ended up shooting at this location. Here's like, so this is from the same location. I've got these two shots, for example. So like you'll see like where the rocks are behind my husband over here. That's literally where the model was lying in the water.
Right.
So yeah, it was like, okay, so I had a mood board on Pinterest. I've literally been like mood boarding, like the mood board's called The Waters.
Yeah.
And I'm just saving pictures of stuff I really like. When you start building an idea, you're just like, cool, just save pictures that you're like, you feel that it's like the area of what you want to achieve. Because as we said, we don't want to copy someone else's work, It's about interpreting like your interpretation of a feeling, how you want to bring it across. And so for me, it was like, okay, great. We've all been locked up. There's like mental health is a very big concern for a lot of people. And like really being in nature and primarily being in water, like is like, we find like there's that disconnection from technology and all that stress and anxiety, like it really comes down to like the emotional connection we have with nature. And a lot of people have felt like they've been taken over. Like I know I live in the city, so being locked up in the city has been very interesting.
I can imagine.
There's a whole newfound love for nature, you know. So I've been exploring that quite a lot with this collection. Also, like the subjects that I would call on, they're quite often very excited, like more than excited to get out, because we don't go out anymore now.
Exactly. It's almost frowned upon.
Yeah, when they're like, "What? Yes, please." I'm like, "Okay, fantastic." So yeah, I mean, here I've got again, I've got my artificial lighting. I've basically got like on the side of my model here, I've got light shooting on her, and then coming from the top as well. And again, like she's seen the same mood boards I configured together. And I was like, look, these are the kind of shots I'm thinking of getting, so she can get an idea on poses.
Right.
But yeah, we're going to see what works, because nature is a thing. Like the elements of life is a thing. You cannot control things completely. It's letting go.
Yeah. No, I'm still struggling with that. I'll get back to you.
No, it is difficult. Like it's something I've had to teach myself for years. So yeah. So I'm going to the next slide. It's basically the same location, different model. Yeah, just exploring with the location. It was really interesting because someone pointed out to me that these flowers is what someone takes to a funeral, and I was like, how did I not know this?
Okay.
Because the message is completely like, I was like, okay, so I'm like literally started writing up, is this the death of me?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's been really interesting just exploring. We're like, okay, cool. I just wanted to really get her to like explore being in the water and, just really connecting herself with it. And yeah, like it's a transformation process, of us just really letting go for once, we all like controlled by the technology around us. It's like a lot of feeling that people having a problem with at the moment. So yeah, going from there to the next scene where I've got another dancer, where this one was actually taken a pool this time. So you can see here, like I've also got like some editing that I've been putting into where I've got some interesting layers and textures. So you can see like my editing process plays a big role in my content as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you mentioned earlier, the camera is going to be producing a raw file. Two different people are going to, do post-production on that looks completely different to each other. And that's really where the difference comes in.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Again, that comes down to training what like your personal eye, that the audience will enjoy and the way you interpret your post-processing. So yeah, so like my waters is really collection I've been working on recently, and it's been a great like cool like part where like my whole like the creative process, the fine art, and like how I'm actually putting that together. Here again, I've got a little behind the scenes, and you can see me in the pool. I love, by the way, this pool not actually nearly as neon as this photo looks like. I got sent this photo and I was like, why was the pool not that purple when I was shooting? Completely different.
Yeah, someone moved the gel off the pool light. What's going on here?
I know. But I mean, yeah, they were like, I had a light sitting over there. I think, yeah, that one I like a bit of a color gel there, and then I had one behind her on the side as well, like on this side coming out onto her. So yeah, again, very much, just playing with the emotion and connection of my subjects with the water. Like, because the thing is, it's a combination of me and my subject, because I'm working with a person at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's not only the message that I'm putting in, but it's also recognizing my subjects and going, okay, because they have a background story as well, and it's just really like, how do you combine them? So I would basically be like, I mean, because both of these girls are dancers who have been going onto online now because, like, no one can perform on stages anymore.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, and then I've got this model over here, and she's like a model that she's been playing a lot with working in the water, and it's just really it's the creative process that happens between us, the communication, and we know as photographers, like that's really where the gold happens,
Yeah, that combining, your experience, their experiences, and what the original plan is. That
Yeah.
mixing all of that is really what's going to determine what the project comes out like for sure.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, with this waters collections, I've just really been working on the exploration of the emotional process, like the emotions that we're going through, in a very interesting manner. Like really, like a lot of us being kept inside, and like a lot of creative people have been chatting to each other because our normal means have been taken away from us and what our creative beliefs. So we're like, okay, how do we go beyond that? I mean, I usually would be up till 2 a.m. retouching my photos, no problem. Like that's how I work.
Okay.
But since lockdown, I've been like, I hate it. And I'm like, what do I do about this? Like something I used to do for fun, I'm really starting to hate now.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because there's definitely a drive that I used to have that I'm missing.
Yeah.
And I'm maybe the word missing is wrong. Maybe I should say it seems to be absent. And
Yeah.
it's interesting how that I just thought maybe it was just me, but obviously that's something that's a little bit more widely spread.
It is something that I like. I've been chatting to a lot of photographers we're struggling the same thing with, which is why we've been like, okay, let's try and go hike mountains and like just
Mm,
do wild naturey stuff as much as possible, because it's always a thing that I say to people like, photographers look like we live like this rock star lifestyle, but we spend 90% of our time behind our computer. Like you'll be
yeah,
amazed how much time
absolutely.
we're actually on our computer. Like, that behind the scenes on set is a fraction of what we're doing.
No, that's absolutely the case. I just wanted to find out, is that your last slide?
Yeah, after that is me finished.
Okay,
So yeah.
cool. No, that's fine. What I just want to do is you can unshare I mean, full screen your screen there. Now that's why I'm a photographer, because I just told someone to unscreen their screen.
And your screen, yes.
Yeah, so yeah, maybe I've lost words as well in this year. But it's crazy how it's really changed the way that we interact. It's changed the way that we do things, and things that we used to take for granted, like as you say, editing till 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Now it's just not the same. It's very interesting how it's changed us.
Oh no, absolutely. So yeah, that's the thing. Like with my skill, like so the thing is like the whole fine art like aspect behind the photography, I've learned like understanding and putting together collections. So there's being creative in your shoots and trying to create consistency. So with the Waters collection, I've been like, okay, again, I'm creating consistency in actual fine art pieces. So that they basically there's recognition and there's repetition behind them. I'm exploring the process of emotions that individuals are experiencing, because everyone's uniquely different. No person's the same how they're experiencing from the pandemic. And I'm exploring that kind of field, the way that we're experiencing it, through using the waters in nature and being like, cool, we're going to go into the water. Here's some cool ideas like wardrobe and makeup. Some of them want to go overboard. Some of them are like, let's keep it simple. And then we just want to literally like, cool, like this is about you getting comfortable in the water. And like, I think one of the interesting elements about doing this kind of setup has been for me, like, okay, I'm just going to go get my lighting ready and you're going to stay warm. Okay.
Yeah, while
Once
still
I'm
in the
ready,
water.
you're going to get in the water, because I can tell you now, you're going to get colder faster than you realize. Us
Yeah.
photographers, you can feel temperature. It's just like the adrenaline. Like I feel nothing.
Exactly. And if you are just even slightly damp and that wind starts blowing, that really doesn't help your case if you're trying to keep warm.
No, it doesn't. And then if I see my poor subject freezing, and I'm just like, cool, I call it a day,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
all I'm going to see in my photos is this.
Yeah,
I'm like,
you can't really do sexy with,
no, it's
you
like,
know.
okay, so yeah, don't shoot with that photographer because she puts her models through a lot of agony.
Yeah,
No.
for sure. Oh man, that's
I mean,
crazy.
yeah, I mean, it's a really fun process, and I always find that quite interesting to explore.
What,
Like, I mean,
torturing
yeah,
your models?
never torture my no. Putting them in very interesting environments. And I guess like that's where like I'll walk them through like this is what I've been doing. I've got a location in mind, and this is what you can expect to experience. We're going to be walking into a river.
Yeah.
I hope you're comfortable with that. Some people are not. That's the thing, and it's like it's okay. Also like I generally know when I look at someone's profile, what kind of like what are they comfortable with? Maybe they're like, no, I don't like. Every model has different comfort zones at the end of the day. And so if I don't know them personally, I can look on their profile and be like, okay, this person likes a studio setup. Maybe this person's not comfortable with nudity. For me, like nudity is completely optional. That's up to my subject.
Right.
That's not really something that's even mandatory for me. Because that's, again, comes down to the liberation of the subject themselves, how they want to show themselves and on the image is entirely up to them. But yeah.
I think, before you or I get cold standing in the rain and wind and things like that here, we should call it a day because then I can go and get coffee or whatever. Kylie / Miss Hepburn, thank you very, very much for your time and going through the process, etc. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to put it up and let people take part and comment. So thank you very, very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure.
It's been really great fun to chat.
Okay, cheers. Bye.
All right, cheers.